When the earthquakes struck Turkey in February, much of the damage was instantaneous. Tens of thousands of people were killed as buildings toppled. Others died trapped in the ruins, waiting for help. Now, months later, as Turkish cities work to clear the rubble, another threat is looming. Experts are warning that thousands of toxins, including asbestos, silica, and mercury, were released during the earthquakes and pose a grave threat to human health. Arda Göçmençelebi is a civil engineer with Turkey's Association of Asbestos Removal Experts. We reached him in Ankara.
Arda, how much of a risk does all of the dust and rubble from these earthquakes pose to people?
It's too much. So the earthquake was the most destructive one in Turkey, and approximately 2 million buildings were damaged and 200,000 of them collapsed. And this process led to a second disaster which will cause much greater damage. 3 million people will be indirectly affected by these dangerous substances.
3 million people will be indirectly affected. What do you mean by indirectly affected?
The government dumped into agricultural fields. These hazardous material will be mixed with the agricultural lands. For example, I will eat apple. The apple comes from there, I eat, and I take asbestos. I take shower, I take asbestos because the dumping areas were near the dams. Mm-hmm. But a bigger problem awaits us. There are 500,000 buildings is in bad condition and has been evacuated. They are waiting to be demolished.
So the actual removal itself is causing a lot of the problems right now, is what you're saying.
Of course. Even you take asbestos for one day, it's a big problem because it will be permanently in your lungs.
Do the people who live there know? I mean, we're talking about it. I'm reading it in Reuters. They've done extensive and very powerful coverage. But do people who live there know?
We tell all the risks in the TV channels as Asbestos Association. We made a press release. I'm sure people heard about it, but no one take it in seriously. Even the ministers and mayors who visited the earthquake zone didn't have the protective materials like masks, gloves, overalls. If they had them, they could make an impact on the society and public could use them too.
These issues have been raised in other parts of the world before. After 9/11, the attacks on the Twin Towers is just one example. Was there any evidence that officials in Turkey were taking any precautions in the immediate aftermath of the earthquakes?
No, not at all. Even now, the rubble, it was transported in the open top trucks, spreading those dangerous substances all the way around. But I'm glad you mentioned the September 11 attacks. This is the only report in the world about harmful substances that have been released as a result of destruction. 500,000 people were affected, according to World Trade Center Health Registry, and they are having respiratory and cancer problems.
The other thing I think about when I think of the earthquakes, in those first days, people were digging with their bare hands, not emergency crews, just the average people who live there. So they were exposed to a lot in those moments.
Yes. The people working in that search and rescue teams, medical personnel, municipal workers.
But just people who live there too.
Yes, and they are exposed. Maybe at least 3 years they will be exposed because this debris removal work will take at least 3 years.
So what needs to happen to keep people safe right now?
If this rubble had been removed with a large irrigation system and dust suppression machines, the spread of dangerous substances could have been prevented. With Asbestos Association experts, if they have a mask, if they have gloves, protective gear, the risk could be minimized. If they will remove all 200,000 collapsed buildings, and after this, 500,000 building will be demolished, there will be huge respiratory health problems, lung problems, cancers in 15 years later, and probably no one will ask why, but whole Turkey will be affected.
Turkey's Deputy Environment Minister Mehmet Emin Birpınar tweeted after the earthquake that authorities were going to separate hazardous materials or recyclable materials from the rubble and that dust suppression systems were being used to prevent harmful substances such as asbestos from circulating. Does that ease your concerns?
Yes, they told this, but what they told is they will try to separate the materials at the dumping zone, and it's already mixed. Also, we were in touch with the ministers, mayors, and they said, okay, we will take this seriously, but as I told you, even them, they were in that earthquake zone without any protective gear, and they are doing nothing. And I think it will go on like this.
Why aren't they doing anything?
I think no one take it seriously because it will affect you in 15 years, 20 years. It's frustrating. I'm trying to explain detail to everyone, but they are telling this, oh, there will be 15 years and we will see. As the Asbestos Association, we launched a project called One Mask, One Life for the earthquake zone. Our goal is to provide protective masks to as many people in the area as possible. But I'm sure they are throwing them away on the next day.
If there are people listening, maybe they have family and friends are in the earthquake zones, what do you want to say to them? What should they be doing to try to help?
As public, they can't do anything because government should handle this process. And when they are in the zone, in the next 3 years, they should use masks when they are on the road. They should use gloves when they are touching something in that zone. They should have protective gear. And it's better to migrate. I don't want to say, but west side of the Turkey, it will be better for them because everyone will be there, will be exposed to this in next years.
You're telling them to leave.
This is the healthier way, but it's their choice.
Arda, thank you very much for your time.
Thank you for having me.
Arda Göçmençelebi is a civil engineer with Turkey's Association of Asbestos Removal Experts. We reached him in Ankara.